Hello and a very good evening to all our viewers who are joining me in this live interaction on Facebook as well as YouTube page of News 9. And today, like I've been telling you all these days, that every single day the COVID-19 virus is, getting a more advanced version of it, and each day new details are arising of the COVID-19. So now, in yet another major revelation that has come to the fore, American scientists have found as an explanation for why men are more vulnerable for the deadly COVID-19 and also its severe symptoms and worst outcomes as compared to women regardless of age. So these researchers from the Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center in the US said that female hormones estrogen play an important role in lowering the levels of angiotensin converting enzyme 2, which is also called as the ACE2, in the heart, which helps in modulating the severity of the deadly coronavirus in women. This study reviewed preclinical data on specific hormone activity, especially estrogen. And one of the senior professors at the Wake Forest School of Medicine said it is because of the hormonal differences. And I also quote what he said. He said that we know that COVID-19 affects the heart, and we know that estrogen is protective against cardiovascular disease in women. So the most likely explanation seemed to be hormonal differences between the two sexes. This is what the professor said. And the researchers have even further stated that the published study suggested that an angiotensin converting enzyme 2, or the ACE2, which is attached to the cell membranes in the heart, arteries, kidneys and even intestines, works as receptors of the COVID-19, which is responsible for the virus infection. So the researchers also said that the ACE2 receptors also help in bringing the deadly virus into the cells of organ systems attached to it. So suppose since the only way that COVID-19 could enter is through our breathing, there our lungs also have these receptors, which is the ACE2 receptors, because to which these COVID-19 viruses latch onto, and that is why we get infected by COVID-19. And the study also, researchers said, that pointed out at estrogens lowering the level of ACE2 receptors in the heart, which may modulate the severity of COVID-19 in women. In fact, in another report, the European Center for Disease Prevention and also Control reported that the male to female ratio for COVID-19 deaths across the EU was 2:1. And the UK's Office for National Statistics reported that rate of death due to COVID-19 for males was double that of the rate of females. So the novel coronavirus appears to be to present a significantly higher mortality risk to men and women. Now, in order to understand why COVID-19 targets only the men and not the women, to answer these questions we have with us a very a well-known immunologist called Dr. Sitesh Roy from Mumbai. Many thanks for joining us, Dr. Sitesh Roy. And today my first question to you is that why is the disease killing more men and not women in particular?
So Deepak, there are several aspects to this whole what we call gender difference that SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, has brought to the front. In these gender differences, from the very earliest data back in Jan and Feb, we knew that the case ratio, so number of people getting infected, was somewhere in the ratio of 60-40, where it was 60% men getting the infection and 40% women getting the infection. Later on, that ratio became 65-35 in certain other countries, and has even been 70-30, where men are more affected than women. So this has been a uniform trend from the very beginning, as we as doctors and researchers have been trying to find the reasons why that happens. And as you mentioned, one of the reasons that was mentioned from the very beginning, and which finally this research has shown, is that we knew that due to female hormones such as estrogen, which is a group of hormones, women have lower ACE2 receptors. The ACE2 receptors are the receptors through which the SARS-CoV-2 virus gains access into the human body. Without enough of those receptors, the virus would not be able to get in. Once it is in, deciding which cells and which organs it will spread to and infect also requires the ACE2 receptors because that's how the virus moves from cell to cell. Given that fact, this paper finally shows that this is one of the key mechanisms, but besides this, there are several other factors. And one of them that has been very important is how our innate immune system responds. So the very first line defender of the human body is the innate immune system. And this innate immune system has been well known for decades as an immunologist, and in the field of immunology is more efficient for women who are in the childbearing age group than it is for men in the same age group. And the reason behind that is Mother Nature has given women that extra edge that when they are carrying a baby, that they should be able to respond to any viral, infectious, bacterial threat in the fastest and best way, which will be critical for the mother's survival as well as survival of the baby. And hence this innate immune system, which is very critical for deciding whether a person is going to have a mild infection, a moderate infection, or a severe infection, and later on how the rest of the immune system will be primed and responded. Also, there is an advantage for women who are premenopausal, which means they have not yet gone into their menopause, and there again the estrogen hormone and the estrogen progesterone ratio makes a very big difference for their immune system, Deepak.
Right, doctor, it almost acts like a COVID shield for the women. And one more question that I would like to ask you is that is the mortality rate among men more due to the absence of estrogen?
So I wish the answer was that simple. And actually, to answer this question, Deepak, believe it or not, there are trials going on in at least a couple of centers around the world where they have created a patch of estradiol, which is being applied to the forearm or arm or abdomen of men to give them a slightly higher dose of estrogen than would naturally be present in a male body, because every woman also has testosterone and every male also has some estrogen. It's not like they're completely absent.
Okay.
And they're trying to see if the clinical outcomes, which means the severity of the disease, the progression of the disease, and also the chance of dying from the infection is reduced in those people who are given the estradiol patches. This is still a question that's up in the air, and it's very tough to answer that at this point of time. But I do believe that for women in the childbearing age group, the presence of estrogen is a protective mechanism that not only makes them less likely to get the infection, but if they get the infection, helping them fight it off faster and better and not progress to the severity levels where they may die. However, in certain places in India, I must say, and this has to do probably with the quality of health and the level of health of women here, the mortality rates in women have been just as high as men in some studies or some very preliminary data available in India, and that might have to do with the lower or poorer quality of health for women in certain sections or regions or places in the country where even their estrogen was not enough to protect them.
Okay, also doctor, now one last question is, do hormones play a really important role when it comes to shielding oneself from any virus infection?
Very much, Deepak, and that's one of the reasons why it has been found since time immemorial, even in ancient medical texts, which has been written, and modern medicine certainly believes in it. And when I wrote a chapter on stress and allergic diseases, it became a very obvious thing to me. But under stress, a person's immune system does not respond very well to infection. And that is why when a person is under stress, they are more likely to catch a viral infection, catch a cold, get a fever, get other problems. And in those situations, there's a hormone called cortisol that is released. And the cortisol tends to suppress the immunity and make a person more likely to get infected by whatever they are exposed to. And so hormones have been known to influence the immune system and hence our ability to ward off infections since a very long time. The role, as I said, of female hormones in protecting women from infections and the nature-given advantage so that they can sustain themselves in the childbearing age ranges
And unfortunately, that protection is lost after a woman reaches menopause. And then their risks both for heart disease and for infections becomes no different than that of men of the same age. Is clear indication that hormones do have a role in protecting us from infections, whether it be hormones like the cortisol hormone or the adrenaline that is released during a fight and flight response. And too much of it also can make our immune system go down, but the right amount of it can actually give us a good response. And many of these hormones have also been connected with the cytokines in our body, what is called TH1, TH2 cytokines, as well as the cytokines that we keep hearing about in the cytokine storm. And that's another reason why it is believed that women are less likely to have fatal outcomes with SARS-CoV-2 infections and COVID-19, is because they may not have as severe and as aggravated inflammatory immune responses as men might do.
Right, doctor. Thank you for joining us with all those insights. Like the doctor clearly mentioned, this might be one of the reasons why women are less vulnerable to COVID-19 than the men, because they have a particular hormone called the estrogen, which helps them in not only protecting their baby during pregnancy, but also helps them shield themselves from COVID-19, which is why the mortality rate among the other sex is quite lesser than the males. But nevertheless, whatever said and done, what we tell our viewers is, no matter whether the vaccine is just a month away or a year away or just a couple of weeks away, all we can do right now is follow all the safety and precautionary measures, because those are the only weapons that we have to defeat this COVID-19. So until next time, please take care and do stay safe. Thank you for watching.